Hello, dear members of the Loving Truth Stories family. Today we are going to bring you a romantic love story. So let's get started. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any meaningful stories. The most powerful man in the city was holding the hands of his new bride at his lavish wedding when suddenly the grand doors swung open. All the guests held their breath. Before the stunned eyes of hundreds of people, a woman walked in with twin babies, bright eyes, and faces identical to the groom. Whispers filled the room, cameras flashed, and in that moment, the CEO's glorious day turned into an unexpected tragedy. Crystal light poured down on the grand lobby of the Royal Empire Hotel, where the city's elite gathered for what was billed as the wedding of the year. Luxurious laughter, sparkling champagne glasses, and soft jazz music echoed throughout the room. In the center, Adrian Blackwell, the most powerful CEO in the real estate industry, stood hand in hand with his new fiancée, a prestigious young lady. He smiled, but his cold eyes contained an emptiness. Suddenly, the great door of the hall opened. No one expected that the person who entered was Eleanor Hayes, the ex-wife whom Adrian had once mercilessly abandoned. Not alone. Beside her were two twin boys, dressed in neat little suits, their eyes shining. The sight made the whole room silent for a few seconds, then whispers and stunned looks began to spread. Adrian stood still. His face paled, and the hand holding his bride's hand trembled. Eleanor walked slowly. The blue silk dress hugged her slim figure, exuding a pride that Adrian had never seen before. She didn't need to speak. Her presence was enough to turn Adrian's wedding day into a public judgment. Audience whispered, "Isn't that Adrian's ex-wife? And those two kids, why do they look so much like him?" Adrian tried to calm down, but cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He never imagined that the woman he once despised would appear on his most glorious day, and even brought along two living witnesses, the result of the love he once rejected. Blood rushed to Adrian's face, but confusion flashed across his eyes. As for Eleanor, she smiled faintly, a smile that did not carry resentment, but rather a power that made the roses in the wedding hall tremble. 12 years ago, Eleanor was just a student working part-time at a small coffee shop. That day, she accidentally spilled coffee on Adrian's expensive suit, a man who was walking into the biggest meeting of his life. Instead of apologizing, Eleanor frankly handed him a tissue and said, "You can scold me later, but if you don't wipe it right away, the coffee will leave a stain." It was that calmness and honesty that caught Adrian's attention, and from that fateful encounter, a whirlwind romance began. After only 6 months, they were married. Adrian introduced Eleanor to a glamorous world: lavish parties, luxury trips, shiny sports cars. Eleanor thought, "This is the fairy tale I have always dreamed of." But that dream vanished after a piece of good news that should have been the happiest thing in life. The tragedy begins. One evening, when Eleanor was preparing a special dinner to announce her pregnancy, Adrian walked into the penthouse with a cold face. He didn't kiss her, didn't ask her any questions, but only said one sentence: "Pack your things, you leave tomorrow." Eleanor was stunned. In her hand was the pregnancy test with 2 pink lines, and on the table were the tiny baby shoes she had bought a long time ago. "Adrian, I'm pregnant, it's our baby." But Adrian smiled faintly, his eyes filled with contempt. "Don't use this trick to tie me down. Who knows the child is mine?" Those words were like a knife piercing straight into Eleanor's heart. In just one night, she went from being the wife of a powerful CEO to a homeless woman with an old suitcase and a small creature in her belly. The image of Eleanor holding her pregnant belly, walking in the night rain, the city lights shimmering reflecting her tears, is the beginning of her arduous but proud journey. And Adrian, the man who thought he was getting rid of a burden, had no idea that he had just thrown away his only chance to keep his family and true love. Millionaire trudged through the cold rain of the city, her belly heavy and her heart broken. The old suitcase dragged on the pavement like a drumbeat, signaling the end of a dream. She had once been the woman sitting next to the most powerful CEO in the city, and now there was nothing left but humiliation. In the days that followed, Millionaire had to rent a small room in a poor suburb. The walls were stained with mold, the windows creaked when the wind blew. But for Millionaire, that place was the only place to shelter the two little creatures growing inside her. Being pregnant with twins exhausted Millionaire. In the morning, she worked as a cashier in a small supermarket. In the evening, she cleaned the office from the 1st to the 15th floors, bending over until her back ached. The manager often scolded her for being slow, but Millionaire did not dare to fight back. Every penny she earned was her child's breath. Many nights, when her stomach was tight with contractions, Millionaire would sit down in the dark hallway of her office building. She would press her hand to her belly and whisper, "Don't leave me, kids. We'll get through this." Her eyes at that moment were no longer those of a weak girl, but of a mother ready to fight the world. That winter night, Millionaire was mopping the floor when she felt a sharp pain in her stomach. The pain was like tearing her flesh. Her co-worker called an ambulance in panic. On the way to the hospital, Millionaire whispered to the nurse, "I think there are 2 babies." The ambulance siren echoed through the night. In the searing pain, Millionaire clutched the old cloth bag, which contained only a few baby clothes she had bought from a charity shop. After hours of struggle, the twin boys were born. Their weak cries filled the cheap hospital room. As the nurse placed the babies on her chest, Millionaire's tears flowed like a river. "Welcome, Diego, welcome, Lucas," she whispered. "You are my world." The first 3 weeks were like a never-ending nightmare. Diego and Lucas took turns crying, leaving Millionaire barely sleeping for more than an hour at a time. Her postpartum body was exhausted, but after just 10 days, she was back to cleaning. A common sight was Millionaire wearing a baby carrier on her chest, holding one baby while she mopped the floor, while the other baby lay in a makeshift crib made of a cardboard box and lined with a thin blanket. Her co-workers took pity on her and gave her a box of milk and a few packs of instant noodles, but it was still not enough. There were days when Millionaire had to skip meals to save money for diapers. She drank water to stay alive, her stomach was empty, but she still smiled when she saw her 2 children drinking from bottles. In her diary, Millionaire wrote, "Life is cruel, but every time you smile, I find the strength to continue." One day, because she was so hungry, Millionaire cooked a pot of chicken soup according to her grandmother's recipe to eat. The aroma wafted through the hallway. A neighbor knocked on the door and asked to try it. After eating, her grandmother exclaimed, "You should cook and sell it. It's better than in a restaurant." That sentence was like a ray of light in the dark. Millionaire started cooking a few more servings of soup, selling them to her neighbors at a low price. Gradually, her customers grew. Some of the office workers she cleaned also ordered lunch from her. She named the small restaurant Alma's Kitchen, Kitchen of the Heart, as a reminder that every meal contains love for Diego and Lucas. But the beginning was not easy. One day, Millionaire had to cycle 10 kilometers to deliver food. It was raining, the food was cold, and customers complained. One day, Lucas had a high fever. Millionaire held him and stirred the soup pot, tears streaming down her face from helplessness. Many people mocked. A poor single mother opens a restaurant. How many days can she live? But Millionaire did not give up. She calculated that if she could sell 20 meals a day, she would have enough money to buy milk for her 2 children. Every night, Millionaire stayed up until 2 a.m., cooking for the next day and sewing clothes for customers to earn some extra money. Diego and Lucas slept next to her, occasionally crying. Every time she did, she would pick them up and sing them to sleep in a choked but loving voice. Sometimes, exhausted, she would collapse on the table, her sleep fitfully interspersed with dreams of Adrian laughing at her. She would wake up with a start, look at her two children, and whisper, "I will never let you bow your heads. One day we will hold our heads high." The Eleanor of today is no longer the weak girl of the past. On her thin shoulders, the strength of a mother is rising. Although the world out there is harsh, but step by step, she is turning pain into action, turning the small kitchen into seeds for a bright future. And somewhere else, Adrian Blackwell sat in the city's tallest glass tower, believing he had lifted a burden. Little did he know that in that cramped kitchen, a woman and two children were rewriting their destiny. The small kitchen in the suburbs seemed to be just enough for Eleanor to cook for the neighbors, but unexpectedly became the door that opened another life. Word spread about Eleanor's chicken soup. It was said that every bowl of soup from Alma's kitchen had a flavor unlike any other restaurant, the flavor of a heart that knew pain, love, and sacrifice. One afternoon, a group of downtown office workers came by. After hearing a recommendation from a regular customer, they crowded into a tiny room, ate heartily, then left their phone numbers, promising to order more. It was the first time Eleanor saw Diego and Luca's eyes light up with pride. "Mom, there are so many customers today." Eleanor smiled, sweat still beading on her forehead. "Yes, kids, this is just the beginning." But the more customers, the more difficulties. Eleanor only had an old stove and a few dented pots. Many orders were late, food was cold, customers complained. At times, she had to listen to harsh words. "A dilapidated restaurant like this wants to sell to office workers." Eleanor gritted her teeth and endured. At night, she wrote down every little mistake in her old notebook, telling herself, "I must do better tomorrow." She had no money to hire staff, so Diego and Lucas, who were only 5 years old, became her little assistants. The two boys learned to fold boxes, wipe tables, and even help their mother deliver food to nearby customers. The scene moved many people in the neighborhood. They began to support Eleanor. Some donated an old table, others donated a set of used stainless steel pots. One day, Mrs. Castillo, the wife of a famous businessman, happened to stop by. After finishing her enchilada, she held Eleanor's hand and said seriously, "Girl, this flavor is not just for sale in the poor neighborhood. It is worthy of being served at large parties. If you agree, I will introduce you to a small event to try your hand at." Eleanor's heart pounded. It was the first invitation to step out of the darkness of the neighborhood, closer to the lights of the upper world. She accepted. For the next 2 weeks, Eleanor barely slept. She learned how to present dishes, bought some used utensils, taught her son to help her wash vegetables and set the table. The day of the event arrived, and everything was not perfect. But the taste, it made the whole hall silent for a few seconds after the first bite. Then the applause broke out. Eleanor has won the hearts of people who would never look at a poor diner. After that event, Diego and Lucas were given 2 small scholarships by Mrs. Castillo to a private school. That night, Eleanor looked at her child in his new uniform, her heart filled with emotion. The children who had slept in cardboard boxes were now about to enter the doors of a prestigious school. Lucas asked his mother, "Mom, are you sad when people laugh at us for being poor?" Eleanor sat down and hugged her children. "Mom is not sad because I know we are on the right path. As long as you study well and are obedient, no one can look down on us forever." Gradually, Eleanor entered 2 opposite worlds. During the day, she was a simple woman in a small kitchen. At night, she put on a white shirt, confidently presenting the menu to wealthy customers. Every time she looked in the mirror, she was surprised at herself. From an exhausted single mother, she was now becoming a woman who could stand up straight and dream. But every time the event lights go out, she returns to her small rented room, hugging her 2 children to sleep. That is the only source of strength that keeps her from falling. Even though Eleanor tried to forget, Every time she mentioned Adrian Blackwell, her heart still ached. At big parties, she often heard his name vaguely. Adrian is about to launch a new project. Adrian is about to marry a politician's daughter. Millionaire didn't want to think about it, but deep down, she knew the day of facing it was inevitable. A year later, Millionaire agreed to organize the birthday party for the mayor's daughter. It was the biggest contract of her life. The party was a huge success. The press reported on it, and images of Alma's kitchen began to appear on social media. Millionaire is no longer just a poor woman selling soup. She has become a notable name in the event catering industry. Diego and Lucas were delighted and bragged to their friends, "Our mom is making a party for the whole city." In that moment, Millionaire realized that her previous painful journey was not in vain. It had trained her to be a person who could face any challenge. But little did she know, a special invitation was waiting ahead. A luxurious wedding invitation, printed with the name Adrian Blackwell, would soon knock on Millionaire's door, pulling her back into the vortex of fate she thought she had left behind. One afternoon, when Millionaire was reviewing the contract for a new event, her little assistant Jennifer brought in an ivory-colored envelope, smiling mischievously. "Sister, it looks very luxurious. It looks like an invitation from a super wedding party." Millionaire wiped her hands and took it. Her fingers trembled slightly as her eyes glanced over the embossed name on the card cover. Adrian Blackwell and Catherine Beaumont. Millionaire's heart clenched. The words, like a knife, brought back all the memories of 12 years ago. The rainy night, the old suitcase, Adrian's faint laugh as he denied his child. Diego and Lucas, now 11, ran into the room, excitedly asking, "Mommy, what is it?" Millionaire pursed her lips and hid the card behind her back. "It's just an invitation, it's not important." But that night, when the two children were fast asleep, Millionaire sat by the window, the city lights reflecting on her pensive face. She opened the card again. In the ornate corner, Adrian had written a short note by hand. "I hope you have the courage to come. One last goodbye." Millionaire smiled slightly. It was no longer a sad smile like before, but a sharp smile. "Fine, Adrian. You want me to see you happy? Then let the whole world see what you have lost." The next day, Millionaire told the story to her best friend Rosa, who had been by her side since the difficult days. Rosa heard, her eyes worried. "Millionaire, are you sure you want to go? You have rebuilt your life. Going there might hurt you again." Millionaire looked into the mirror, her voice calm but firm. "I have suffered enough. I am not here to seek his recognition. I am here to affirm that my two children and I have never been a burden. We are a source of pride." Millionaire calls this preparation Operation Dignity. Attire, not a cheap silk dress, but a designer dress turquoise, which accentuated her skin and strong eyes. The two boys, Diego and Lucas, will wear little suits, learn how to shake hands and communicate politely. Millionaire said, "You are not only my sons, you are representatives of our family. We will go in there as winners." Mentality. Millionaire hired a speech coach to teach her how to stay calm, how to answer questions from the press, how to walk through a crowd without flinching. Every day that passed, she was like a general preparing for the most important battle of her life. One night, after practice, Diego suddenly asked, "Mom, why do we have to go to his wedding? He doesn't need us." Millionaire sat down and hugged her son. "Yes, Adrian doesn't need us, but we need to show the world that even without him, we can still stand. You don't need to be ashamed. It's him who should bow his head." Lucas, the more sensitive child, whispered, "Mom, will you forgive him?" Millionaire was silent for a long time, looking out at the starry sky. Finally, she said softly, "Forgiveness is not because he deserves it, but because I don't want to keep the burden in my heart forever. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. I forgive so that we can move on, not let him tie down our lives anymore." When Millionaire walked out of the fitting room in the turquoise dress, Rosa choked up. "Millionaire, you look like a queen." Millionaire looked at herself in the mirror. She was no longer the weak girl she once was. This was a woman who had been through hell, through storms, and returned with a calm, strong gaze. "Not a queen," she whispered, "just a mother who survived and knew she was worthy." As the wedding day approached, the press was abuzz with news of Adrian Blackwell and his high society fiancée Catherine. Photos of Adrian in a tuxedo, smiling brightly, appeared all over the newspapers. Elena read the news, her heart no longer ached. Instead, she felt a strange emptiness. The man who had once made her cry was now just a name. In her diary, Elena wrote, "He chose to leave, I chose to stand up, and my choice brought me here." On the last night before facing the past, Elena sat by her bed, looking at her two sons sleeping soundly. She stroked each of their hair and whispered, "Tomorrow, I don't need revenge. I just want the world to see you the greatest achievement of my life. That will be the answer to everything." Outside, the city was still glowing brightly. In a corner of a high-rise, Adrian was probably partying with friends, unaware that tomorrow would change his entire life. The wedding invitation became a public invitation for Elena to enter the arena. But unlike 12 years ago, this time she did not go empty-handed, not in the cold rain, but with her two children, a testament to her love, her determination, and her victory. Adrian Blackwell's wedding day was held at the Grand Belmont Hotel, where crystal chandeliers reflected off the high ceilings, live music played, and the elite crowded in their gorgeous tuxedos. The media lined up outside the gate, cameras flashing like fireworks. Everyone wanted to witness the moment the real estate king married the noble Lady Catherine Beaumont. Adrian stood in the center, wearing a finely tailored black suit and a smug smile. He looked around, enjoying the admiring gazes. For Adrian, today was the day he would prove his victory to the world. Little did he know, an even bigger surprise was waiting at the door. The great door of the hall opened. The music died down. Elena walked in. She wore a delicately tailored emerald green dress, her steps graceful yet decisive. A serene smile appeared on her lips. On either side were Diego and Lucas in small suits, their eyes bright and their postures straight. The whole room seemed to stop breathing. People whispered, "Who is she?" "Oh my God, that's Elena Hayes, Adrian's ex-wife. Those two boys, don't they look exactly like Adrian?" Cameras flashed frantically. Reporters quickly changed their focus. Within seconds, the focus of the wedding was no longer on the bride and groom, but on the woman who had just walked in with two children. Adrian was stunned. His face changed color slightly, and the hand holding Catherine's hand suddenly trembled. Elena walked straight forward, her eyes not avoiding. When she stopped in front of Adrian, she gently introduced herself to everyone around. "Hello, I am Elena Hayes, and these are my two sons Diego and Lucas." The whole room was in an uproar. Many people covered their mouths in shock. Catherine turned to Adrian, her eyes filled with doubt. "Adrian, what is this?" Adrian forced a smile. "No, it has nothing to do with him. She just wanted to ruin things." But Diego, in a clear voice, replied, "We didn't come to cause trouble. We just wanted everyone to know that our mother raised two children on her own who should have had a father." Those words were like a thunderclap. The entire wedding hall fell into absolute silence. Adrian felt the blood rush to his face. He wanted to protest, but the eyes of the hundreds of guests were staring at him, half suspicious, half angry. Catherine jerked her hand away from Adrian's and took a step back. "You've been hiding this from me. These two children are yours." Adrian stammered, "No, there is no evidence." But then Lucas took out an old photo from his pocket, a photo of Elena and Adrian at their wedding years ago, their faces radiant and their love obvious. "We don't need your approval. Just the truth speak for itself." Elena smiled, her voice calm. "I didn't come here to reclaim love, nor to humiliate anyone. I came to remind Adrian and all of us, there are choices in life that cannot be undone. He chose to abandon me and the children, but I chose to stand up, raise my children, and rebuild my life. Today, I come here not as a betrayed wife, but as a victorious mother." The room erupted in murmurs of agreement. A few people began to clap. Then, gradually, the applause spread. Adrian stood frozen, his face pale. Catherine threw the bouquet of flowers to the ground, her eyes cold as ice. The press rushed in, taking pictures. Questions were asked. "Mr. Blackwell, did you abandon your ex-wife when she was pregnant? Are these 2 children your biological children? How do you explain this to your current bride?" Adrian stammered but had no convincing answer. Meanwhile, Eleanor just held her 2 children's hands and smiled calmly. "Let's go," she whispered to Diego and Lucas. "We've shown the world the truth. No more is needed." The mother and her 3 children turned and left the hall with dignity. In the background, Adrian and Catherine were arguing. The press was recording, the guests were whispering, and what had been a lavish wedding suddenly turned into the biggest scandal of Adrian's career. That night, the online press exploded with the headline, "Powerful CEO Adrian Blackwell was surprised by his ex-wife and 2 children at his wedding. The shocking truth." The articles analyzed, the online community discussed. Some people blamed Eleanor for not ruining the wedding, but most supported her, admiring her calmness and dignity. "There are truths that cannot be hidden by money or fame," wrote one commentator. And last night, the truth was revealed in a turquoise dress and proud eyes. In the small but warm apartment, Diego and Lucas hugged their mother. "Mom, we did it." Eleanor smiled, her eyes sparkling. "Yes, children, but this is just the beginning. From now on, we will not only survive, but live brilliantly." Outside, Adrian's empire began to crumble. Partners withdrew their funds, and his personal reputation collapsed. Meanwhile, Eleanor, the woman who had been abandoned, embarked on a new journey, full of light and freedom. After the shocking events at the wedding, Adrian Blackwell fell into an unprecedented crisis. The image of the powerful CEO on the magazine cover is now replaced by heavy headlines. "The man who gave up his family for glory." The harsh truth behind the rich smile. Investors began to withdraw their funds. The billion-dollar project was suspended. The bank called to recall the loan. Catherine, the bride who ran away on the wedding night, cut off all contact. Adrian sat alone in his high-rise office, looking down at the glittering city lights. But to him, all those lights were now just bitter reminders of what he had lost. Meanwhile, Eleanor and Alma's kitchen took off. The story of a single mother raising 2 children alone, turning hardship into strength, appeared in newspapers and on television. Eleanor did not use the wedding event to retaliate. Instead, she simply responded to reporters with a short sentence. "I am not seeking revenge. I just want my children to know that they have the right to hold their heads high." It is this calmness and kindness that makes the public respect him even more. Charitable organizations, politicians, and even large businesses seek cooperation. A senator even asked Eleanor to host a fundraising gala for poor children. At the gala, she stood under the spotlight, recounting the nights she spent holding her baby in a musty rented room, and smiled. "And it is those nights that give me the strength to stand here today." There was thunderous applause. Many people were in tears. Eleanor had become a symbol of resilience and dignity. One evening, Diego and Lucas, now older after their wedding experience, sat next to their mother on the porch. "Mother," Diego asked, "do you regret having loved someone like him?" Eleanor was silent for a moment, then smiled. "If it weren't for that past, there wouldn't be 2 of you, and if it weren't for those hardships, I wouldn't have become the woman I am today, so I have no regrets. I'm just grateful that we found each other." Lucas hugged his mother. "You are the best mother in the world." Eleanor smiled softly, her eyes filled with tears. "No, you guys are the best gift of my life." One rainy afternoon, as Eleanor was leaving the office, Adrian appeared. He had lost a lot of weight, his expensive suit was now wrinkled, his eyes were empty. "Eleanor," his voice was hoarse, I'm sorry, I lost everything. But the most painful thing is that I lost you and the children." Eleanor looked at him, her eyes no longer filled with resentment, only distance. "You didn't lose us today, Adrian. You lost us 12 years ago when you chose to turn away, and we learned to live without you." Adrian bowed his head, his shoulders shaking. But Eleanor only walked on, her heels clicking on the stone floor without looking back. At that moment, she knew, finally she had freed herself from the ghosts of the past. Years later, Eleanor becomes the CEO of an international event planning company. Diego and Lucas grow up, one into architecture, the other into social work. At an awards ceremony for outstanding businesswomen, Eleanor stepped onto the stage to thunderous applause. She said, "I was abandoned, I thought I had no value. But I learned that true value doesn't come from what other people think of you, but from how you get back up after you fall. If I can do it, anyone in this room can do it." The audience stood up and applauded. Many wiped away tears. That night, Eleanor returned home and stood by the window, watching the sparkling city. Diego and Lucas, now grown up, were still sitting and laughing in the living room. She smiled, gently closing her eyes. In her heart, there was no more pain, no more hatred, only peace. Once upon a time, Adrian wanted to humiliate her with a wedding invitation. But that very wedding day became the beginning of his destruction and her rebirth. And Eleanor knew she had not just survived, she had won. When I look back on this journey, I realize one thing. In life, there are people who will turn their backs on you when you are at your weakest. But it is also those moments that will teach you how to stand up, lean on your own feet, and turn pain into strength. I used to think that loss was the end, but in fact, it was just the beginning of a new chapter. The lesson here is clear. Never let others define your worth. Instead of asking, "Why did they abandon me?" ask yourself, "What can I do to become stronger from here?" As a philosopher once said, "We cannot choose what happens to us, but we can choose how we respond." And that choice is what determines our destiny. How about you? Have you ever turned a failure into an opportunity? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your story may inspire others too. If you found this story meaningful and want to help us spread these important values, please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next inspiring story. Together, we can build a strong community filled with love and justice.